let me take this out. I'm making dinner. I'm also gonna make cinnamon rolls for tomorrow. Dairy-free cinnamon rolls. Ooh, fancy. So I got and this is how my chili turned out. And here are my kale chips. Fantastic. So I'm about 15% of the way through Jackal. And it's good so far. I've got chocolate in my teeth. I'm trying not to show my mouth. I just had dinner. I had chili and I had, I put kale chips on top of my chili. And I had handfuls of chocolate chips for dessert. But the thing about it is, because I didn't want to make cookies. Because I didn't have butter and I didn't want to make cookies. And I didn't want... I could have made... I could have made cinnamon rolls, but I just didn't want to deal with it. Because that was more cooking and I didn't want to waste dishes. Regardless. So, Jackal. There's a lot of nuance about racism and colorism in Jackal that as a white person, I will never understand fully the nuances of entirely. The subtleties of racism and certain things. But there is a certain amount of what I can glean from the book is that she feels, as a black woman who has had to survive by, I don't know, passing as because she's having a certain amount of light-skinned blackness has given her a certain amount of passing that she, in a white town with predominantly white people, she integrated into white culture a certain degree, but she never was fully, you're never fully white. You're just taking on roles and values and cultures in the same way as if a white person lived in a fully black community, taking on roles and cultures and values of living in a system in which you entirely do not fit, but you are trying to ingratiate yourself as much as possible. But it's different for a black woman living in an entirely white town. And they talk about this in very subtle ways. They talk about it in that when she gets off the train, there's a smell in the air, a permeation of rainwater rot, of wood smell. And the thing about, she says she's afraid of woods because of what happened to her friend growing up, that her friend was murdered. But I think that it's small town. There's a small town fear of what happens in the woods that's permeating culture of being one of the few black people in town and never quite knowing what's going down in the backwoods and always having to check yourself around white people. And I think that that's part of it that I can glean from that, is that there's always that white people are just not trustworthy in a sense, and that there's a systemic sense of violence all around you, and that she as a character does things to she does things to protect herself. And so she's falling into old habits again, from what I can glean from reading about 15% of this novel. She falls into self-destructive habits, such as her friends will have her self-medicate with alcohol as a way of trying to relax and chill out, as a way of trying to calm what her body knows is a real and present danger around her. This systemic violence and fear and she can feel it in herself. She can feel it in herself that something is wrong. And knowing it's because humans are, I'm not saying that she is an animal, but human beings have these senses. We have these senses within ourselves. We know when something is wrong. We have these senses, these abilities that we know when something is wrong within ourselves, within an environment. We know when our body tells us things when something is wrong. We can feel it within ourselves. And so it's being reflected in the text that she has this discomfort, this anxiety, and she's trying to place this anxiety somewhere, but she can't. And that's what the author is talking about. That's what the horror is. She can't place this anxiety, and what it is the systemic environmental racism. It's the systemic abuse that she's being suffered through having to deal with the people around her. And so she falls into old habits, and they say, oh, that looks like the same dress you wore to prom. And it's obviously peach colored, this like pastel-y peach colored. And so the first thing I thought of when I saw it was, and it was just a gut reaction of what they were trying to do, or what the author was trying to do, is that she's falling into these old habits again, these old systems of belief, these old situations of that she's going back to the past, that things are recurring again, that it's happening over again, and she's being pulled back into situations. I think she's become a person who has had to protect herself in many ways. And so she's a person who distracts herself with work for the most part. She will look at people and she will be angry so much, because they said that she looks at people and says, what the fuck are you looking at? And that was something that she said she does. I don't think that was always the case. I think that that's something that she's learned to do, and I think that's something that New York taught her to do. I think that growing up, she had to fawn over people, and that she had to... this is all inferences from the text, and this is only from the 15% that I've had to read through before, because I think that she had friends like Mel and other people because she has a sweetness about her, and that growing up she had to be... because she was permeated in white culture growing up as a kid, that she had to be fawning and sweet and loving, because they talk about like how women always have to be kind and certain things. And that, so I'm thinking that when she was a kid, she did not have that fuck you attitude that she has now as living in New York. That's something that she's grown into as an adult. I think when she was a kid, she had to fawn over people, and being back into this violent culture of small town living, which is so in your face at all times, I think that she has that fawning behavior she falls into those old habits again. And so she doesn't like, but, and there's something about the symbolism of the mice. She keeps being afraid of seeing mice, but that they're always present, that there's like a pestilence, or that there's like there's always, because she said her mother is always so neat, but there's always mice around, and they're in a barn at the wedding, and there's mice around, and there's always like this sign of like disease and pestilence. It's like this environmental, is part of that environmental horror that's kind of unsettling, that the author is building within this story. And I've just read about 15% of the book, and that's what I'm getting from it so far. So that's where I'm at right now. So it's interesting. It's interesting where we're at. I got chocolate in my teeth. So yeah. Interesting, right? Interesting. But I'm going to, I think I'm gonna, do I want to read more of it? I don't know. So I was at this part of Jackal, and I wanted to read it because I thought it was kind of important. Hey, this man's voice wasn't like the boys. The boy spoke with her with a wide-eyed sense of awe, mutual excitement. Hey, baby, where you going? Morgan knew better than to look at him. She walked faster. You too good for me? Morgan didn't know how to answer the question yet. No matter what the world deemed her, she was still a girl. I just want to talk. He wanted her to be afraid. She knew that. When someone was afraid, they are easier to manipulate. Morgan set her face in stone, stayed in the light, and kept going. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw him and noted his appearance. He was short for a man, but taller than her. Bitch. How quickly she went from baby to bitch. One more turn to home. She stopped. If she went that way, he'd know where she slept. She didn't know what to do. Morgan remembered what her father had taught her about bullies. Confront them. Don't let them see you hunch your back. Show them you will fight. Morgan lashed out, the only weapon she had. She turned to face the man and smiled with all of her teeth. You have a pretty smile, he said. Her smile stayed. She crossed her arms over her chest but tilted her head. Her eyes burned with anger, full of contradictions. She had wanted to shove the man away, but she needed him to think it was his idea. You hear me? He asked. She grinned wider. Her lips cracked at the strain. Her cheeks ached. She showed her gums. She made the most horrifying image she knew. It was one that she saw in the decaying box of pancake mix in the bottom cabinet in the kitchen. A red-lipped mammy on the box haunted her dreams with the image of its forced jollity. She widened her eyes to show the whites. What's wrong with you? She let out a wild laugh. Without realizing it, she did exactly what her mother would have told her to do in the situation. Act crazy. People will try to mess with you if you look small, but not if you look crazy. After taking in strange behavior one last time, the man left. Morgan's expression relaxed. She felt a flutter in her neck. She pressed there and felt her heart pounding. Home was a block away. Powerful. I am overread. I've been reading too much. So it's about midnight, and I have proofed my dough to make cinnamon rolls. Why not make cinnamon rolls at midnight? So that's where I'm at. I just have to make the filling. They are certainly very ugly, but I'm eating one right now, and they are very delicious. So, I kind of wanted, in this moment, I've been doing a lot of stuff today, in the last, a little bit, but I wanted to get to the segment of why I don't trust social media anymore. So, and it has partly to do with why my mental health tanked last October and why I ended up in the hospital. And it partly has to do with like the 2024 election. If you're new from like BookTube, you probably don't know any of this stuff. Like, if you're new to BookTube, if you haven't been on YouTube very long, you wouldn't know about a lot of the features of YouTube. But like, especially with like shorts and things like that, if you're like scrolling through shorts, like, you don't know about some of the features. But like, so one of the things that I would do before, in order to protect my mental health, is I have a specific channel for viewing. I call it my algorithm channel. So like, I have this channel in which I post my videos. Ari reads books. But if you see me commenting, I'm commenting on another channel called Ari Whipple. And it's like, why does she do that? And it's like, because I keep my algorithm, and sometimes I'll comment on this channel, but usually I comment on Ari Whipple, because I keep my algorithm and my my videos separate for the most part. Sometimes it gets a little messy, and I will subscribe with certain channels because I want certain channels on this channel, but usually I don't. But one of the features, because I usually view my videos on Ari Whipple. That's my algorithm channel. If I'm watching videos, it's on Ari Whipple. That's like my safe space. That's like where I watch videos. That's like my little corner where I keep my shit clean. And one of the things that I did on Ari Whipple is, that's where I have YouTube Premium, etc. But one of the things about that channel is that if you don't like a video, you just tap the 3 buttons in the corner and you say, "Don't recommend channel to me." But the thing about it was, and what makes YouTube so insidious, is during the 2024 election last October, is you would say, "Do not recommend channel," and then 5 minutes later, you're seeing the same videos, the same channel, over and over again. You would say, "Do not recommend channel," and you would close out YouTube, and then maybe a day later, you'd open it back up, and their same videos would be popping up, and it was like everything you said was irrelevant. And like, videos that you said you didn't want to watch from like months ago were popping up. And this is during the 2024 election. And they could say like, "Oh, this was just a glitch, But this is during the 2024 election. And this felt like an attack. And that it was very, I don't know what it was, but and I say this to say this other thing, that after the election and during the inauguration, this other thing happened, which was my friend, who is LGBTQ plus, was forced to follow Donald Trump and JD Vance, and that was on Facebook. And he did not want that. So, and he had to check to make sure that he was following Donald Trump and JD Vance. So in order to not, he blocked them. A short time later, he discovered that not only had Facebook auto-unblocked Donald Trump and JD Vance, but they had auto-refollowed Donald Trump and JD Vance without his permission. And that's what I'm saying, is that you cannot trust social media to be at your best interest these days. And this is like, you say you don't want things, and social media will just ignore you. I'm stuck right now because I just finished my meditation, but I want to read, but I want to get dressed. So here's my compromise. I'm going to read a chapter of Jackal, which the chapters are fairly short, and then I'm going to get dressed. Okay, I read a chapter. Time to get dressed. So I had a thought as I was reading it. And it's one of the nuances that's slowly dawning on me. Don't mind me, I'm getting dressed. So, as far as I can tell, Mel is white. Right? And so, the story of Carolyn being missing, their daughter, who is black, because Mel is with a black man. And they had a daughter together, and Carolyn is mixed or black, because she's biracial. The story of their daughter being missing seems to be, as it unfolds, more about Mel's suffering as a mother, as a white mother, rather than Carolyn's disappearance. And that's just a thought that I'm having, is that she, and maybe that's her privilege, that she's like, where are the dogs? Where's all this? And she's like being very demanding. And at first they were hesitant to do those things for her. But since her husband is a police officer, and because she is white, they were hesitant to do those things because her daughter was black. And so they didn't care necessarily. And she even said, like, they don't really care. But because the mother is white, because the husband is a police officer, because of that suffering of the mother, and because she is shedding white women tears, she is afforded those allowances to get the things that she wants in order to, it's almost like using her privilege in a way that she gets the things that she wants. And that her privilege is protecting her daughter. But it's almost at it's almost like at the behest of the community. Like, nobody wants to do things for Carolyn because she is black. They consider her like black, even though she's biracial, which is a totally different thing. And they don't want to help her, but they do it because her mother is white. And that's such a nuance. And I was talking to my sister about colorism yesterday, And so she was trying to wrap her mind around it. And I've listened to conversations about colorism online, and she was like, "That's such a fucked thing. Like colorism is so fucked." And I was like, like within the black community, and it's like, yeah, it's a fucked thing, but like, it happens. Like, and it's hard to talk about as a white person because it's just there's just racism and there's not racism, and it's not nuanced for white people. There's either racism and there's not racism, but for black people it's a little bit different. It's levels of racism, which is a little bit, harder. I wanted to read this part because I thought it was really interesting. A man and his shadow live in the trees. When they walk in time, both are pleased. If one calls your name or the other tempts you off your path, you must ignore 'em both or face their wrath. Kayla knew this rhyme was far from anything sweet. It was a warning. It birthed stories of a crazed man in the woods, or was a man inspired by a rhyme. Either way, true or not, it was reason enough to stay out of the trees, no matter how pretty flowers and berries and mushroom caps drew her in. Living on the edge of Johnstown meant that she had a knowledge of the woods. When it came to her traditional education, her family was changing things for the better. It meant sometimes they got flowers and flyers in little bags weighted with unpopped popcorn. Her mother told her to grab them before anybody saw. Kayla read one once. It was a recruitment for the KKK, or as her mother said, white folks in search of their own mythology. A dismissive frown covered her mother's face as she tossed them into the trash. If a group like that was as far north, what did it mean for their nice white neighbors? That proximity to danger didn't set well with Kayla's mother. Kayla could tell because of how tight her mother did her pigtails in the morning. She calmed her nerves in her child's hair. Kayla would undo them at school, and the barrettes would crack her knuckles when they were released. Snap. Myths were as much a part of a slipstream of black life as joy. Yes, black folks are masters in joy. Trauma isn't the only thing carried in the DNA. Blackness, like any golden fleece, is both a birthright and what lies at the end of a quest. What myth lay just beyond Kayla's fingers? The woods. So I went out to lunch with my sister, and I have not done any more reading on Jackal. But this vlog is getting to be quite long, so I want to post this. I want to post this, um, and then for today, because I want to get this out to my Patreon. Um, I think because I'm gonna keep reading, I'm gonna keep filming later on for today for like the second half of the book, for the second part of the read along with this, because I'm gonna keep filming stuff about it. My cat just did a full Halloween cat on me and just like made a cringe face where he was like at me where he was like stretching. He was like, "Ugh." That was a good stretch, was it not? Did you stretch good? Did you like your stretchy stretch? You need to get down. Um, but I'm gonna keep filming. Uh, I need to make a blog for today because stuff happened today. I did eat a nap. I don't want to take a nap. Maybe I'll do some reading and take a nap. But I want to get this blog out or this video out. Um, so this is the outro for the video. I hope you have a good rest of your day. And I will see you on the next one. Consider subscribing to Patreon. Thanks, Sonny. Okay, bye.